Hello, everybody. Welcome to the FITT Show. I know you probably wondering where in the world was me and Dope. We were experiencing technical difficulties, but we're here and we're all the way live. Thank you all for tuning in. This is the FITT Show. Financial information for today and tomorrow. I'm Bobby Kinzer.
And I am Thomas Doty.
And we are the FITT Show. Like I said, apologize, experiencing technical difficulties. But today's show, I guess it goes with the name of today's show, The Psychology of Money. Now, thank you for tuning in. Like always, we want you to make sure you click on the thumbs up button, the like button, the heart button so that we can get traction. So, Dope, let's get right to it, man. Let's get right to it. What's going on with the stock market?
Stock market has been crazy. If you look at the week-to-week change, it's really not that much, but it's just been very volatile. And the market, the Dow dropped 500 points today. Week-to-week, it went from about 35,100 to 35,200. But the big hit today was because bond yields rose, and 10-year treasuries were up over 2% for the first time since 2019. And all that reaction is to inflation rates for January, which are at a 4-decade high, 7.5%. So that's kind of putting a scare in the markets, calling bond prices to go up or bond yields to go up, which creates other opportunities for your money. So there's less opportunity to put into equities. So that's why when interest rates go up, when interest rates go up, the amount of money that can go into equities typically goes down. So everybody's worried that the Fed is going to be more aggressive in raising interest rates, which again would have a negative effect on the market. The Nasdaq, it went from 13.9 to 14.2 in a week, but it was as high as 14.5. Same with Microsoft. Week to week is 300 to 302, but it got up to 311 this week. Tesla, 884 to 904, it was as high as 939. Apple, 171 to 172, but again, it was as high as 176. And finally, my Pfizer is taking a little hit. It's down, started the week at 53. It's down to 51. But again, that's still my dividend play. So the dividends on that are still pretty good. So a volatile week. The week total does not look bad. But within the week, there's all kind of activity. And again, everybody's worried about inflation. The market had kind of started to stabilize. I think like 7 of the last 9 days have been positive. And so this has kind of put a jolt in it. And it's going to be choppy until either inflation settles down or we get the feel that the Fed is going to do something, but they're not going to do too much. So it's going to be choppy in the coming months.
But though the cryptocurrency market has trying to rebound, especially the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is up now and it's around $43,000 per Bitcoin. As we know, last week it was really down. The last several weeks has been down. Shiba Inu is sort of kind of rebounding because it had dropped down to, but Shiba, it still dropped down from the 13th position to 14. It's still struggling. But the cryptocurrency market appears like it's trying to rebound. So like we always said, it's about the long play anyway. But the cryptocurrency market, the market cap, I don't know if I remember y'all told you last week, it dropped all the way down to about just $1 trillion, 700 billion. It's back now up to 2 trillion. And the Bitcoin was all the way down to almost 700 billion. Now it's up to 824 billion market cap. So it is showing some sense of rebounding. But hey, that's cryptocurrency, right? We told you it's highly speculative. So that's where the cryptocurrency market starts. So today, like last week, we talked about, why diversify. And I hope you found that being a really good show because that is so important to, it's not just about your performance or trying to make a gain, but it's just trying to mitigate, losses and being steady with gains. It definitely determines how well you diversify your portfolio. But today we got a very important topic, and it's called the psychology of money. And this is a psychology of money part one. It is so much to talk about the psychology of money. Like over the last 36 shows, by the way, this is our 37th show. We have discussed strategies and techniques and methods on how to personally manage your money. We have given you statistics and data, but realize that many people's financial decisions are often based on their behavior, their values, and their habits. Chances are, if your parents was bad managers of their money, chances are you probably will be the same way. Now, success with money isn't about just knowledge, your IQ, or how good you are at math. It's about behavior, and everyone is prone to certain behaviors over others. Once you become aware of your tendencies, you can harness the power of your own mind, your thoughts, and your will, and you can literally change your life. So, the psychology of money is basically the study of our behavior with money. We need to come to value the self awareness as a tool. So, the same is true uh, for money. Dave Ramsey said, the personal finance is 20% head knowledge and 80% behavior. That's why it's a proven plan for getting out of debt relies on changing your behavior instead of throwing a bunch of numbers or formulas at you. And if you want to get to the root of why you behave the way you do, why you spend, save, use debt, pay off, investing, or more, you've got to learn about the psychology of money and how it affects you. Today, we're going to discuss some of the points from the book of Morgan Hochul's The Psychology of Money. So, dope. Been kind of getting on board here.
Yeah,
Like, shout out.
yeah.
Go.
This is it's really important to understand this, as you said, because a lot of times, a lot of the mistakes you made, you can look back on them and understand and learn from them. And the thing that poor people typically miss is good advice when they're young. And it's so important to start off right on the right track when you're young. And life's much easier if you start when you're young. So even if you've passed that point, it's good information to have to pass on to other people about how to handle money and not to fall into the same bad habits that you fall into. I often tell my kids of some of the mistakes I made. I think they know and understand those, and it's just so they don't make those same mistakes that I made. Because a lot of the things I've learned after. I didn't learn growing up. I didn't learn from my parents. My parents didn't have a whole lot of money, but some of the things I did learn from my mother were things like, taking care of your credit, not overextending yourself. And she would always talk about saving money, and that kind of stayed with me. So this is an important topic. And again, if it's past where you are in life, it's still information that you can pass on to younger folks.
And dope, my experience with money, especially the psychology of money, one of the reasons why I tend to be so risk adverse and conservative. Yeah, my favorite Star Wars, right? It's because I come up. My mother, you know, she didn't even have a high school education because back in the day they needed you to work on the farm, so you didn't have a chance to go to school. But she taught us math, taught us English, taught us how to write, taught us all of those things. But she really didn't teach us how to manage money, and so we grew up. I'm one of seven, the youngest of seven, and my father was in the household. So my mother, she struggled with managing money. And so, but we always had, that was the interesting thing. We always had. I never went without, I didn't have holes in my shoes, in my pants, you know what I mean? But somehow she made it work. But because of that mindset, I kind of grew up with, not really wanting to take a lot of risks. When I got on my feet and got very, well, established financially. Sometimes I didn't make certain moves because I knew what it was not to have, and I didn't want to go back there. So mentally, it kind of affected me. I mean, it's not no kind of affected me. It did affect my approach to money because a lot of my friends, they have a way desire to go after money, but I don't have that same desire sometimes. And I think it sort of prohibited me from being able to be more further ahead with my wealth because I just didn't have that desire about money because I'm used to just living soberly below my means. You know what I'm saying, though?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a fear, and it affects you. And I always worried about this with our kids. And we're delaying going into the show, but we're just trying to give you some background. It always, because I had that fear of being poor, and that kind of drove me to make sure I went to college. And first to earn a scholarship to go to college, because my mother said, if you want to go to college, you better find a way to go. And then to make sure I got a degree that I could get a job in and save money and work hard, because I didn't like growing up not having. But my kids didn't have that same. They kind of came up in an okay world. So I'm just happy that they found the incentive or found something to make them want to succeed, become college graduates. They're all gainfully employed. Nobody's on my payroll anymore. So it's something you can pass down, but there's a lot of people who didn't have the luck or the desire that I had, because it takes both to be able to succeed and have this information to pass on. And what we're going to get into is some of the reasons why. And it was just surprising to us as we talked about this and looked through the articles. It was just kind of amazing and kind of some earth-shattering. Some of them seem like they're plain, but they're really not when you think about it. I think we'll get into it in a minute.
So let's jump right into it, though. The psychology of money. So one of the first topics we want to talk about, how you behave is more important than what you know. Let me explain what that means. Your personal spirit for money has nothing to do with what's happening in the world, but it is heavily influenced on how you think things in the world work. In other words, a lot of people think that the things that they're going through is it's really what's going on. Like every decision people make with money is justified by taking the information they had at the moment and plugging it into the unique mental model on how the world works. And we do know that the world really don't work like that. Like we always say, your perception is not everybody else's reality. So a lot of times people be reacting and making decisions, based on being in a vacuum. But it's really not as important as what you know. But the important is how you behave and the decisions you make.
Yeah, and people do some crazy things with money, but nobody's crazy. But you got people from different backgrounds, different generations, raised by different parents, had different incomes, different values, different parts of the world, and different economies, different job markets, all these differences. And like I mentioned before, different incentives and luck. A lot of it is luck. Everybody learns different lessons. And so that creates a bunch of different ways to accomplish the same thing. If you think about it, people should make investment decisions based on their goals and characteristics of the investment options available to them at that time. But that's not what people do. So studies have shown that people's lifetime investment decisions are heavily based on experiences that they had in their own generation, especially experiences in their adult life, early in their adult life. And what that does is if you didn't get good information, you end up making decisions with not good information. And you have to find a way to change that and start thinking differently. But everybody tends to go back to what they're comfortable with and what they know, in spite of information that they may have that tells them to do something different.
Man, dude, I can't tell you many times I second guess myself. You know how they always say sometimes you need to go with your intuition. But when you start talking about luck and risk, right?
Mhm.
Which are both the reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces other than your individual effort. You know, old guy once told me this way. He said, Bob, I believe in luck, and this is why I believe in luck. I believe you work for your luck. Now, both luck and risk happen because the world is too complex to allow 100% of your actions to dictate 100% of your outcomes. I mean, how many people we know reacted to certain situations, though, and end up making bad financial decisions? You know, I've
Yep.
seen people do that with you know, buying cars, you know, because they wanted that car so bad, and they sat in that car and sitting on the autos lot and started smelling that new car feeling and got all excited. Then they took him and they drove him around the beltway and dropped the top. Next thing you know, they making decisions based on, and that's how a lot of salesmen do. They know how you feel, so they work on your emotions. But luck and risk are driven by the same thing. You're one person in a game with over 7 billion people, other people, and it's infinite moving parts. The accidental impact of actions outside of your control can be more consequential than the ones you consciously take.
Yeah, and that line between being inspiringly bold and foolishly reckless can be very, very small. And you can only tell the difference with hindsight because there's so many options out there to choose from. And nobody really knows what's going to happen in the future. So you can look at somebody and say they're crazy for what they're doing, but it could work out right. And you can look at somebody who's reckless and think what they're doing is reckless, but it works out right because there's so many factors that contribute to what's going to happen in the market. And as Bob mentioned, it's what you do is so small compared to what's happening into the world. So the next thing we want to talk about is when enough is enough. And this kind of struck me because it kind of the basis of what I tell my kids as far as setting their expectations. Most people feel life isn't fun without a sense of enough. You know, happiness, all it is results minus expectations. You know, if your expectations are really high and they almost equal your results, you tend to be happy. But you set those. You decide what your happiness level is. Okay, you set the expectations, and that's the tough part for people is keep moving the goalposts. You know, they keep changing. You know, I did the same thing myself. I remember when I started working, I started off making 12,600, and I just thought, man, if I could ever get to 50,000, I'll be a Mac Daddy. I'll be the man. You get to 50,000, boom, nothing. Yeah, man, if I could get to 100, life will be. I won't need nothing else. You get to 100, boom, nothing's changed. If I can get to 200, to 300, 400, and you get there, and you find nothing's different. You know, so in other words, the goalpost keeps moving. And so it gets really dangerous when you keep wanting more, you know, more money, more power, more prestige. It increases ambitions faster than satisfaction. It puts you in a bad place. You got to make sure you don't do that. So people get into comparison, social comparison, and that's when you get into trouble. You know, you can never win that battle. You know, it's a battle. There's always going to be somebody who has more, gets more, maybe started with more, luckier, whatever. The only way you can win that battle is don't get in it. Just stay out of it. You know, accept the fact that you have enough, even if it's less than what people around you have.
Though, remember that Prince record, When Doves Cry? It had a line in there. She's never satisfied. That's what's not having enough. That song always, my mother used to love that song too. But the one thing, this is such a profound statement though that Morgan Housel stated. He said, "There's no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need." Let me say that again. There's no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need. I mean, I see it all the time when I consult with people, and it's a fun little statement. Some of my friends call me their financial therapist, right? Because I was getting on them about, certain, they're going through certain financial problems, and they'll go out and buy, some big ticket item that they know they can't afford, and it's only a want and has nothing to do about their need. But maintaining a lifestyle below what you can afford is avoiding the psychological treadmill of the old saying in the neighborhood, keeping up with the Joneses, that have taken so many people out trying to keep up, trying to, keep up with your neighbor, your friend. And that's about the psychology of money, being able to understand where you are and what you need to do by having a plan to go forward.
Yeah, and now we're going to talk about something that we've talked about before. And again, it gets into how you think, what your basic foundation thoughts are. And it's compounding. And most people think good investing is about who gets the highest returns. But it's not, because the highest returns, they come and they go. It's one off. If somebody gets lucky and picks something that does well, and you aren't going to be successful consistently seeking high returns. The key thing is earning pretty good returns that can be repeated for a long period of time. That's when compounding goes crazy. The point is, Warren Buffett is worth $84.5 billion. $84.5 billion, that's what he's worth. $81.5 billion of that came after his 65th birthday. That's crazy. That's crazy how much money he's made since then. It's all about compounding and saving for a long period of time.
Yeah, his skill is investing, but his secret is time. And that's how compounding works. And we've talked about that a lot, though, in a lot of our shows, because they did a survey. And one of the surveys they did on people investing was what was one of the major deterrents of people investing. And guess what it was? It was people being impatient, meaning they're not willing to be patient and take the time and hang in there and weather, when the market is at a bear market, and, not, trying to jump in aggressively when it's all a bull market, but being able to understand your risk tolerance and your time horizon, it is so important. If you want to do better as an investor, the single most powerful thing you can do is increase your time horizon. Time is the most powerful force in investing. And I tell young people all the time, I said, with the number one, the number one biggest, most important asset you have is time. So meet the day, everyone. Make sure you plan your time horizons appropriately, because that's how building wealth is really amassed. It's not overnight. And don't talk about it all the time. Building wealth is not something that just happens overnight. It comes with consistent investing and making consistent, good financial decisions. No, I want to talk about getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. And there are many ways to get wealthy, but there's only one way to stay wealthy. Now, some combination of frugality and, believe it or not, paranoia. Good investing is not necessarily about making good decisions, not necessarily only about making good decisions. It's about consistently not screwing up.
Hey, Bob, that reminds me of that show Coming to America 2. The house that the palace, the setting for the palace belongs to the rapper. What's his name?
Master P.
No, not Master P. It's the Rick Ross.
Oh, Rick Ross.
Yeah,
Right.
he bought it from Evander Holyfield. And when he bought it from Holyfield, Holyfield told him he spends $1 million a year just cutting the grass and taking care of the yard. And Rick Ross thought, wait a minute, I can't stay rich spending $1 million to do my yard. So he went to John Deere and bought a tractor, and he tricked it out a little bit, but he cuts his grass himself. He said that's just 3 hours of time to himself, and it makes him feel good that he ain't spending $1 million a year just to take care of his yard. So that's the key thing: getting rich and getting wealthy and staying wealthy. That's how to do it. So the key is sticking around for a long time and not wiping out or being forced to give up a lot of what you've already made. That's the difference. That's the cornerstone of your strategy. You don't have to be out here looking for the highest return, taking a lot of risk. If your time horizon is long enough, you can. I mean, just think about it. If you got $1 million, say, and we always talk about the market does 8% over on average, and let's say you're a little like Bob, you're a little risk averse, so you only make 5% because you're a little less risky. But still, that's 50 grand a year that you make for doing nothing, no effort, no nothing. That's 50 grand richer you are every year. And so planning is important. We talk about that all the time. It's very important. But part of your plan has to be that the plan is not always going to work. Okay. And many bets fail not because they're wrong, because they was mostly right in the situation that required things to be exactly right. So everything's not going to go right. You got to have room for error or margin of safety. It's one of the most underappreciated forces in finance. You've got to have room for error. And a frugal budget, a flexible thinking, a loose timeline, anything that lets you live happily with a range of outcomes. And like when we talked about diversification, that's what that does for you. It gives you margin for error. Something's not going to go right, but typically something that you have in that same portfolio will act in the opposite direction of that thing that's not going right.
I lost you there. Can you still hear me, Dope?
I can hear you good.
Yeah, okay. It broke up on my side. Dope. Want to shout out to our frat brothers, Rob Robinson and Charles Clutch McCargo, that are checking us out, and my main little brother, Carlton Chapman. Thank y'all for watching. Hey, Dope. Clutch said there must be an end that makes you happy. And if money makes you happy, money is numbers, and numbers are infinite, and you will be chasing happiness forever if money is what makes you happy. Thank you.
Well, he's absolutely right. And that's the thing I stress to my kids, is to get to the point where you set your standard of living and realize you're living okay, and you don't have to live any better. And when I say any better, I mean you don't have to buy that next house, that bigger house, that nicer house, that bigger car, that nicer car. And you set your standard of living, and you take what's left and you invest that instead of keeping up with the Joneses and trying to, every time you get a raise, you increase your spending. That's the trap you run into, of always looking around and seeing things. I know I've been guilty of that in my life. There are things that I was never aware of as I was growing up. But once I got a little bit of money and I found out about them, I had to have them. Things I hadn't even heard of. But it's once you realize that, you can start reacting to it, you can start controlling it, and you can get in your mind, I'm comfortable here. I don't need any more. The rest I can save.
The next topic under the psychology of money, Dope, is freedom. Now, I've always said that, freedom for me is financial independence. And freedom, when we start talking about money, is, to me, is the ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want. It is priceless. It's the highest dividend money pays. The highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. That's one of the things I learned about retirement, though. Taking away that obligation of having to report in and sign in and be accountable and responsible to somebody else. It's so, I feel so free now because of retirement. It's just that, people want to become wealthier to make them happier. Happiness is a complicated subject because everyone is different. But if there's a common denominator in happiness, a universal fuel of joy, it's that people want to control their lives. And that's when you manage your money appropriately. That's when you can have control over your life because, believe it or not, money isn't everything, but it's better than not having any. But it's really so important of being able to, like I said, get to a financial position. I mean, there's always going to be debt. People try to talk about how, debt's just going to go away. And you're always going to have some kind of debt. Like we said, there's a such thing as good debt. We just don't want the bad debt, the ones that bring you down, like credit cards and car loans and things like that. But financial independence is the goal. And how you get there is by the money decisions that you make, the appropriate sound decisions you make based on, information, solid information. And that's how people become happier once you feel you have control of your life. Because, I mean, obviously, that's why some people get so in the rut. They feel that their life is spiraling because it's out of control. And it usually comes from mismanaging money. And also, that deals with a lot of emotions sometimes. But once you get those things intact, get your focus on, have a plan, set your horizon, and understand your risks, then you be on the road to financial independence.
Okay, and now let's talk about the man in the car paradox. And
What's that, Joe?
It's appropriate for me to do this because you guys know how I feel about cars. And first I'll talk about the subject. And the subject is no one is as impressed with your possessions as much as you are. And that's what you have to realize here. And that's the paradox. People tend to want wealth to signal to others that they should be liked and admired. But in reality, those other people often bypass admiring you, and not because they don't think wealth is admirable, but because they use wealth as a benchmark for their own desire to be liked and admired, which when you think about it is probably true. And if respect and admiration, if that's your goal, be careful how you seek it. I mean, humility, kindness, and empathy will bring you much more respect than horsepower ever will. And it's crazy for me because I like nice cars. I'm a car nut, but that desire for me had nothing to do with impressing other people. It had to do with the fact that we never had a car growing up, which used to drive me crazy. I mean, just going to the grocery store on the bus and then finding a jitney to bring us back. In my head, I always thought I am going to get me a car when I can, and it's going to be a nice car, but had nothing to do with impressing other people. But a lot of things that people buy, that's why they're buying. That's why they're buying. Guys do it, women do it, people do it, and you got to find out what makes you happy and stick to that, and not be worried about what other people are thinking.
I want to give a shout out to my main man over there in England, John Tresvant. Thanks for joining us. You're up pretty late, John. So that's a 5-hour difference. They're ahead 5 hours. Thank you for tuning in. And want to thank everybody else out there overseas who are watching. I know it's late for y'all to be checking and tuning in to me and Dope at the FITT Show. FITT Show. We're here every Thursday at 8 p.m. So please continue to share this on Facebook Live, and also go, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and that way we reach more people. Like I say, hello, Garnett. How you doing, girls? Thank you for tuning in as always. Dope. Wealth is what you don't see. Now, let me tell you what I'm talking about there. Wealth is what you don't see. Spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. We tend to judge wealth for what we see because the information we have in front of us. We can't see people's bank accounts or brokerage statements, so we rely on outward appearances to gauge financial success. Like we talked about that, keeping up with the Joneses. Cars, homes. We do it with Instagram photos. Modern capitalism, which we live in, you all. This is not no democracy. This is capitalism at its best. Makes helping people fake it until they make it a cherished industry. And you know friends that are like that. They're just faking it to make it.
Yeah. And to repeat, the true wealth is what you don't see. Wealth is a nice car that you don't buy, the diamonds that you don't buy, the watches that you don't wear, the clothing foregone, and the first class upgrade decline. Wealth is financial assets that haven't yet converted into stuff or things. That's not how we think about wealth because you can't contextualize what you can't see. But it's hidden. You don't see it. You don't see wealth. And you have to have that satisfaction inside of you that we talked about a minute ago of just being able to do what you want, to not have to work when you don't want to work. If you want to work, you work because it's something you enjoy doing. It's an option, not taking to buy something, but doing it later, okay? It's value lines and offering you. You got options if you got wealth. You got flexibility if you got wealth. You can quit your job and take a sabbatical and find something that you want to do if you have wealth. And you can buy more stuff later than you could right now. That's what wealth is. And we don't talk enough about wealth. All the conversation is always talking about being rich or getting rich and things and stuff. But the goal should be wealth and not trying to keep up, not trying to impress, but to have that wealth of that generates options and flexibility.
Hey, Dope. Clutch said Larry Bird got drafted and went to camp in an old truck. Magic Johnson got drafted and went to camp in a Cadillac. That sums it up right there. Dope, there was this book called Millionaire Next Door. And it's a great book. It's an old book, but it everything in it pertains to today. Because it talked about how wealthy people went to the mall once or less than that a year. They had a car that was at least 9 years old. They spent less than $500, really sometimes less than $300 on a suit. They didn't buy expensive watches. On the other side of the story of the Millionaire Next Door, the people who had less money went to the malls, once a month, bought, a bunch of jewelry and clothes and things like that. And the contrast was so interesting, like this subject where we saying, wealth is what you don't see. That's what that actually means. I think that's one interesting concept because I look at a lot of my friends and the ones that I know that are doing very, very, very well, they just live within their means and they're not showing it. It's not like they don't enjoy their life. It's not like they don't, buy nice things or take the trip, but they just don't overdo it. The key is, really living within your means. And that's how, you can get, stay away from that stuff, owning stuff, making you feel like you've accomplished. When stuff is nothing but that, though.
And it wears out. Stuff wears out.
And it wears out real quick, man. Especially that new car syndrome, dope. When people end up buying that car and they drive it off the lot, then after a month or so, they realize when they get that first note, because you know what they said Mercedes stand for, dope?
What's that?
Mercy. These payments are killing me. So So stay away from those things of and build wealth. That's the key. That is actually the key, though. Yeah. So let me get into our last topic is saving money. Because we talk about this, and we've even made the statement that sometimes saving is intuitive to creating wealth. And what we meant by that is just putting your money in a savings account. Most times, is not going to create wealth. But building income has little to do with your income or investment returns, and lots to do with your savings rate. Notice I'm saying your savings rate. Personal savings and frugality, finances, conservation, and efficiency are parts of the money equation that are more in your control and have 100% chance of being as effective in the future as they are today. Now, wealth is just the accumulated leftovers after you spend what you take in, plain and simple. And since you can build wealth without a high income, but have no chance of building wealth without a high savings rate, it's clear which one matters. You must be able to save money so that you can have an emergency fund and that you are able to invest. That is so important.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dope.
No, go ahead.
No, you jump in.
Okay. No, it's just, you think about wealth, it's just the accumulated leftovers after you spend what you take in. And you build wealth, you can build wealth without a high income, but you have no chance of building wealth if you don't have a high savings rate. So it's clear which ones matters more, not what you make, but what you save. And learning to be happy with less money, that creates a bigger gap between what you have and what you want. So similar to the gap you get from growing your paycheck, but easier and more in your control. A high saving rate means having lower expenses than you otherwise could, and having lower expenses mean your savings go farther than they would if you spent more. Okay? So spending behind a pretty low level of materialism is mostly a reflection of ego approaching income, a way to spend money to show people that you have or had money. Okay? Think of this like this: one of the most powerful ways to increase your savings isn't to raise your income, it's to raise your humility. When you define savings as the gap between your ego and your income, you realize why many people with decent incomes save so little money.
Yeah, savings can be created by just plain and simple, spending less. You can spend less if you desire less, and you will desire less if you care less about what others think of you. Everyone knows the tangible stuff money buys. We just talk about stuff. The intangible stuff is harder to wrap your head around, so it tends to go unnoticed. But the intangible benefits of money can be far more valuable and capable of increasing your happiness than the tangible things that are obvious targets of our savings. Savings without a spending goal gives you options and flexibility, the ability to wait, and opportunity to pounce. It gives you time to think. It lets you change your course on your own terms. Like we said, you being in control.
Yeah, I mean, even savings in a bank that earns zero interest might generate an extraordinary return if it gives you the flexibility to take a job with a lower salary, but more purpose. It, makes you feel good and better about yourself, and to help you reach that elusive goal of being happy. Or it might allow you to wait for an investment opportunity that might come up, and you have the flexibility, you can do it if you save. So less ego, more wealth. It's as simple as that. Saving money is the gap between your ego and your income. Wealth is what you don't see. And we're only halfway through this subject, and we're hoping it makes sense to you. It did to me. It was kind of, I wish I had some of these things when I first started. I think I'd be a lot wealthier. Let's just say. But so we're going to hold our summaries and takeaways till next week when we finish this subject. But we hope you got something out of it. It's really an amazing topic, and take some time and think about it. Think about some of the things we said. some of the things you spent money on, some of the stuff you bought that is now just stuff. You can't even remember what it is. You can't even remember when you got rid of it, but you had to have it at that time. But now it's not worth very much.
And nowadays they talk about the concept of, do you want stuff or do you want the experience? Do you want to go on a trip or something like that and enjoy the experience more than just buying and accumulating stuff? Because I know some people are just hoarders, man. I looked at my neighbor's garage, man. He had stuff, 2-car garage and 2 Mercedes, and one is sitting out in the snow and cold, $80,000 car, because he has so much stuff on the second garage. When the door opens up, it's filled up to the top. So he's parking his $80,000 car outside in the weathers. And it's been like that. I've been there. This is going on 22 years, and the same stuff is in there. But
and it's crazy about some of this stuff we're talking about makes me think about decisions I made, but some of it makes me smile because some of the things I've bought, which wouldn't be considered luxuries, I think I would still do over. Back in 1986, I believe it was, I bought myself a Rolex, and I had went to school at night. I'd earned my MBA. I had studied for the CPA for a year, passed the CPA exam, and I wanted something to commemorate that achievement. And I bought it. At the time, it was $2,000, which is a lot of money back then. But I'm still glad I've worn that watch every day of my life since 1986, and that's almost 26 years. No, more than that. No, it's 26, right? Yeah, 26 years, which I've gotten total value about that. I don't care if anybody noticed it. It's something that reminds me of how hard I worked, what I accomplished. I was proud of myself. Didn't do it to impress anybody, so I'm glad I did. Now, I can also think of hundreds of things I bought that probably were just to impress people. But you do, and you live, and you learn. And I think I got much better about that as I got older. And again, I wish I had this framework to work with when I was younger versus learning as I go. And this is something that I hope the young people listen to, think about, and take to heart, because it can make a huge difference in your life as far as when you can retire and what you can do when you want to do something. You can do anything you want if you just drop your ego a little bit, drop your humility, live within your means, and increase your savings rate.
And our motto here at the FITT Show is, you control your money. Don't let your money control you. Plain and simple. You control your money. Don't let your money control you. You don't work for your money. You want your money to work for you. And I hope y'all can see from this show, The Psychology of Money, money, actually managing money really has so much to do about your mindset. It is all mental. It doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. It really comes from what's going on up here. Though one of the emotional decisions I made, which was, it was inherent in the name of the car that I bought. I bought a Saab, and that should have been a giveaway right there. It was a sob story, but I had to have that car. I had a Ford Pro, was at that time, they don't even make Ford Pros anymore, but it was first made, but it had a Mazda engine in it. But the note was like $200, $219 a month. But I traded that mug in because this guy had this Saab, and I always wanted that Saab. Man, that was the worst car. Man, it caused me so much maintenance costs on that car, though. It was beautiful. It held the road nice, man. And, Saab, Swedish cars are some of the most safety built cars. But man, that thing cost me so much money, and that was purely an emotional purchase, man. And I learned my lesson from that. Thank God. So with that, you all, thank you. Remember, this is Psychology of Money Part 1 next week. And believe it or not, there's more to go on this subject, you all. And we just want to make sure that we get it, that individuals get it, where we're coming from. Because we talk all the time about strategies, and concepts and financial methods. And that is important because we also talk about knowledge is power here. And remember our other saying, you can lead a person to knowledge, but you can't make them think. So we're always going to be dropping some knowledge, but we want to make sure we get this, y'all, because it is a mindset, how you handle your money. So, stay tuned. Yes, we always start at 8 o'clock. Next week will be right on time. Thank y'all for tuning in. Dope, any closing remarks?
No, I think we covered everything we wanted to cover. We'll be back at it next week.
Thank everybody for viewing, especially all y'all folks overseas and the folks here domestic. Remember, financial information for today and tomorrow will set you free.